Hi class, we'll try this again. This is Marshall Sponder, your lecturer for Web Analytics. So we're going to try maximizing the screen and see what it does. Let's see. Black screen, huh? Okay, let's try this. So we have the third lecture here on metrics. So we already covered in the last presentation that a lot of the platforms create intermediate metrics, meaning that they create meaningless data points that they care about, whether it's visits or visitors, likes or follows, that are easy for them to create because they're collecting that information from people, but that might not particularly be all that useful for the people that are using these tools. They certainly can't take you all the way to return on investment, and yet they're useful. They're useful for something. The question is, what are they useful for? I think they're useful as an indicator of activity. They're useful also as an indicator of well, that's it, really. I mean, none of the intermediate metrics or social media analytics metrics are really useful for anything out of the box except the things that the platforms are measuring, such as a like or a visit or visitor or a bounce rate. There's no meaning behind any of these for the business. The only meaning that you get out of it, out of any of this, is whether you can put it in any kind of context or not. So, and I just wrote an article very recently, published in Our Social Times, that I don't have it right here in front of me to show you, but I was asked about, how CEOs and CIOs feel about, measuring all of this stuff. Like, can we do it? Especially social media, but certainly web analytics. And I said, what we have is not so much a metrics problem as an omni-channel problem. I mean, we can't really depend on the information coming from any one place anymore. It's coming from all over the place, and it's coming from different platforms that are measuring things in their own way and saving that data their own way and calling their metrics what they want to call them for their purposes. And then when you try to take that out, or anyone tries to take that out and try to make some sense out of it, you can't just add them together because they don't really equate to something. It's like adding apples, oranges, and tomatoes together. They don't really go together because, so you can kind of put them side by side. And you can't combine them into soup judiciously, or something, or make a meal out of them. But I don't think that so in that sense, you can combine these metrics. But in terms of getting return on investment on it, I guess if your return of investment is a meal, then you've got that. Now, we alluded to in the second presentation, and I think in this one, that there was a Domino's Pizza case study that I actually put one in, and also I alluded to in the last presentation of Domino's Pizza and what would be important. So I went and tried to search for anything that Domino's might have said. I don't actually think that this actually comes directly from Domino's Pizza. I think this is probably somebody's graduate or undergraduate presentation that I found on SlideShare. But it looked like a reasonable approximation of something that Domino's might care about, such as, and these are the metrics on the right. These are the things that they would be measuring, especially around the mobile app. But bear in mind that a lot of these are coming from a lot of different places. Not all of them are going to be from the web analytics platform. So when you decide how you're going to report on this stuff, and it's coming from all over the place, you do actually have to be not only just an analyst, but also a curator. You have to understand, forget the background noise, but how you're going to combine all these things together. let's see, I just also find something here about how to compare these different Pizza Hut versus Domino's versus Papa John's and Little Caesars in terms of conversation. Now, I think if you're going to compare them all side by side across things that they all share, like third-party data, like conversation rate as per the social media platforms. If you use the same social media platforms and the same data collectors, theoretically you should be able to compare the rates across platforms. Whether this actually tells you anything, it depends, because the effort involved in each one of these different Papa Murphy's I've never heard of before. Papa John's, Domino's, and Pizza Hut and Little Caesars I've heard of. But in terms of the effort and the team behind these things in each brand, there's so much that we don't know that, trying to compare this on the outside doesn't actually seem like it's a very helpful, because you don't know what's driving it. So the intermediate metrics, for example, these Domino Pizza, like how many people actually like Domino's pizzas that placed an order online or went to the store. And I think you could actually capture that, believe it or not, if you took the trouble to. And I think that one of the reasons why we study this course is to realize that we can actually do these things. Not whether we did it or not, because I think besides the point, never mind whether we actually get to do these things or not. What I want students to understand is that they can do these things, not whether they did or not. And because I think it's important to understand that this is possible before you actually go out there and find out that you can and can't do it. Yes, it would have been possible to do this had it been set up properly in the first place. Sometimes that's not always possible to do. But I think if you look at most of the metrics you get out of platforms as barometers of interest, you'll probably get more out of them than if you look at them as absolute indicators of a financial transaction or an activity that you're hoping, in a lot of cases, that is what it means. So they're data points. If you really want to know ka-ching, 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 you're going to have to go back and actually put all the measurements around the ka-ching points, such as you'll have to have buy points or some kind of thing that people do that matters. Like, for example, I just recently, we're moving into this great luxury building, and it's a beautiful building. We spent a lot of time looking at this building, even as it was being built. Like all of that really can't easily be measured. Like how would one know that? Well, we talked about it, so you could kind of measure that online. But, the only thing that really matters to the people who are the builders and the renters is that the lease was signed. All this other activity that happened and all the other time doesn't matter. So a lot of the things that could be measured outside of that really doesn't matter if you can't actually have this endpoint where something gets signed and someone moves in. The same thing with any business goal. If we're going to talk about the bottom line, we have to determine what the bottom line is. In any situation, if we can't determine what the bottom line is, then we're probably not going to be able to get to any kind of ROI or return on investment. Use cases where an organization uses web analytics. Okay, well, we use it again for collecting a lot of visitor data to the websites. Again, if we can get them to come to a website and we've got the web analytics on it, we can measure most of everything they do on there if we take the trouble. We could see how people are performing on that website, and they could do performance measurement. We could put these metrics on and set them up, the key performance indicators. We can optimize the delivery of our marketing on these websites and also to get them to the websites, which is our advertising. And we can get that content on the website to work better for what it is that we want it to work for, or what our audience wants it to work for. And I guess the two are really interrelated, aren't they? So these social media platforms in Twitter and Facebook, as I said, they create a lot of intermediate metrics. In our textbook that's coming out soon, my co-author calls them action analytics. I've been pretty careful to say that these action analytics are really also intermediate metrics, so we can align our two ways of talking about it. I think that if you connect these kinds of metrics with a campaign, you've got a good shot of measuring, the effectiveness of the campaign that you're running. So like if your campaign in fact is to get more likes, or you want to get more people to a page and like it, you can create a campaign with advertising, and then the fact that you're getting these likes, you're getting these views of the page, and you're getting them at a price that you want, is something you can measure. I think the problem has always been when you try to take them more broadly than that, when you try to make it into more than that. Because I think if you try to make it into that, if you just settle with that, that's fine. Now, in web analytics, we have also, I call these intermediate metrics. They're activity metrics. They're page views, revenue, time spent. They all come. The revenue part actually is not an intermediate metric in the sense that it really does need to be set up. You're not going to pick up revenue unless you set up a shopping cart, and you have to set up the analytics e-commerce code to collect that. But having said that, these are just basically bean counters. That's all they do. They're bean counters. That's all web analytics is a bean counter of some kind. A database that's configured to spit out a bunch of reports. Intermediate metrics are, again, we've got these pre-configured ones, and then we've got the ones that we have to define. Some of these metrics, I won't really go into this, but some of them, like at the pre-configured ones, are some of the ones that Adobe and Google has. I list them here. And then there's some that really, the free custom variables, these are the ones that you really have to create as an admin. These are the ones you would, if you were taking Adobe Analytics, the admin class. Now, designing works KPIs that work. So there's an exercise we have on one of the discussions in one of the weeks. It could be this one or the next one, where we have to define a business problem and choose a key performance indicator, and then 3 or 4 processes. I'm not even going to go over this. Just follow the instructions and do it. You kind of need to know what you're going for before you can actually measure it. But you need a way of deciding what it is. So, and we basically do have these things called key performance indicators. If we're on track, we were going to get this. We're all used to them because we see them in our cars and we see all kinds of dashboards. But the best way to think of a key performance indicator is defining something that we can take some kind of action on. And so one of my students in a past semester said, she worked at the student cafe at Baruch downstairs on the ground level, and I guess their sales are going down, because what she was saying. And it's not hypnosis, it's hypothesis. I just noticed it. The hypothesis, sorry about this. Maybe I'll leave it in there just to get it. Hypnosis is problem impacted by low nights. The baristas don't seem to care. Maybe they're rude. I don't know. They've been nice to me. So she created this this metric where she defines something that's obviously not in web analytics. It's an observational type of metric, sort of one that you have to assess. So this would be problematic for a web analytics platform because much of the qualitative data, the data where you have to observe what people are doing, is not something you can actually get out of web analytics for the most part. just keep in mind that when you create key performance indicators, you may want to make sure that what you're defining is something you can actually pull out of your platform. And here's how Web Analytics, I alluded to it in the last presentation. You've got a visitor that is on a browser, visit a website. They load a page from the website that's being monitored. It sends the information to the web server. The web server sends that information to the Adobe Analytics server or the Google Analytics server. It takes that data, processes it, puts it into a report, and then it dumps most of the raw data, and then what you see is the report. So obviously you have a problem here in that if you're not collecting the data you should have collected, you later realize that you should have done something to collect some information and you didn't, you can't go back and get it anymore because all the raw information is gone, you know. Now in the past, the original Web Analytics also took it from web servers. That could be replayed, but most of the Web Analytics we're familiar with and using this semester, and most of them out there use a JavaScript method. So we have these two methods. Web servers actually create files. So in theory, you could run Web Analytics on that. The ideal solution is to have both of them, but very few companies do. And of course, the drawbacks of JavaScript is just what I said earlier. If you made a mistake and you didn't collect some information by putting the right tagging on it, by setting things up, and once your reports are created and the data's gone. And then there's some other things like file downloads, video views, Flash and Shockwave files, AJAX. They're just not captured unless you go out of your way to capture that information. It's not. Some of that would have been captured in the log file analysis. That's why it's good to have both. But, you know, the advantages of the JavaScript are that it's a lot cheaper hardware-wise. It's less administration. It also gives the places like Google an incredible amount of information that they could data mine. Extensible can roll this out. So the problem is, though, what we got for that, because we got that, we lost a lot of things that the log file analyzers did, like really track downloads and things like that. So in reality, we may have suffered as much as we got because many people don't bother to do the right enablement, therefore they don't capture the information that they then later decide they should have. And it's okay, you know, like, you know what? Life is a learning thing, and we're always going to be learning. And that's what you need to do when you are studying this stuff. So I'm going to stop now. This is the end of the third presentation. Cheers.